This meeting is being recorded.
I'd like to call to order the Town of Willington Inland Wetland Water Course Commission today, March 24th, 2025. The time is now 7:32. Call to order and roll call. Mr. Jordan's not feeling well today, so he's absent, but all other commissioners are here. There's no alternates to be seated. There are no new applications to be received. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the February 24, 2025 meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at those? Evan and Ralph, Mark?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion on the floor to approve the minutes? I don't have any corrections to anyone else?
I don't have any questions. I move to approve.
Is there a second on the floor?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. There's no public hearing scheduled, so we'll move on to new business. Inland Wetlands application 25-3, application to construct common driveway with associated site improvements at 57 and 61 Losey Road. Previously wetland application 2006-57, owner D. Stakelski, applicant N. Peterson. There was a site walk that was held today at 5:30 to review the site conditions and the crossing, the stream and wetland crossing. There was a brief discussion with the engineer to get a little bit more information, but they're here to present tonight. So I'll turn the floor over to you, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. Sure. For the record, Mark Peterson, professional engineer with Gardner and Peterson Associates. With me this evening is Richard Zulik, certified soil scientist, and the property owner, Dustin Stakelski. So as Chairman mentioned, this is a new application, but there's a lot of history with it. As back in 2006, there was a wetland approval for nearly the exact same project as what we're proposing this evening. Two parcels of land, 57 and 61 Losey Road, which I know Mike D'Amato is pulling up on the screen now.
So I have the permit I can bring up, or if you want to see the plan.
I think the plan would be best, please.
Okay. I think that's called previous maps. Does that look correct?
Yep.
Let me share it so they can see it. Let's just share the entire screen. What is going on? You guys should see the plan coming up. You guys see that?
Can see a browser screen. There we go. I can see it.
So on this plan, Losey Road is at the bottom of the page, generally parallel to the bottom of the page. North is to the right as you look at this map. There's a wetland delineation for a wetland system that runs generally parallel to Losey Road. That is,
Go for it.
following my cursor, generally in this location. Oops. And then again, the opposite side, the westerly side, is over here. So we are proposing a common driveway coming in along the north end of our frontage. When we started this in 2006, we had two driveways, one for each lot. It was felt it was best to combine them. So we're staying with that methodology to have a single 14-foot wide common driveway crossing the wetlands at that north end of our frontage.
I got you.
Oh, that's even better. So the wetland boundary is shown there in blue. And the topography on the site generally drains towards Loshi Road from the rear of the property to the front, west to east. And then the water course drains from north to south, right to left on this plan. So there's going to be 2,120 square feet of wetland disturbance. We're proposing 2 culverts to convey the flow for 50-year storm frequency and constructing a driveway over and utilities over that crossing. After that, we'll be climbing the hill with the common driveway to serve one house and septic system on each property. There will be approximately 88,000 square feet of disturbance in the 250-foot upland review area. We have sedimentation erosion control shown on plan view and in detail. We have erosion control blankets on the side slope of the driveway at the wetland crossing, an anti-tracking pad at the construction entrance, a temporary check dam down gradient at the proposed crossing, and a number of sediment traps on the low side of the driveway where we're encouraging sheet flow to shed runoff from the front yards and also from the driveway into these sediment traps to capture sediment both during site construction and any movement permanently once the houses are constructed. So we've also shown a proposed tree line on the plan, and we will be staking the limits of disturbance and tree line during construction to make sure the plan is adhered to. There's proposed stockpile area shown up near the house, and the construction of this crossing will be done in the summer season when the flows are as little as possible. At our site visit today, we definitely saw things under a much worse case with all the rain that we're having today. But we're going to time this project, assuming it's approved, to be have that driveway crossing constructed in the spring, and we can get some stabilization in the side slopes shortly thereafter. So with that, I'll turn it over if you have any questions of myself or Rick Zulik. I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I have several questions. First to Mr. D'Amato. Does this require planning and zoning's blessing before it moves forward?
It does not. So this was part of I think when we looked at it, it was initially part of a free split.
Okay.
Mark can elaborate.
Yeah, we have a map that was recorded back in the 2006 era showing each parcel, common driveway easement to give access to the southerly parcel across the northerly parcel.
Okay, because I see a catch in the zoning regulations with respect to common driveways. 4.21.09 is something that you should look at. But that aside, I have concerns with the elevation of the driveway where it crosses the stream is essentially the same as the elevation of Losi Road. We have a double culvert, which I like to see. It's certainly substantial in cross section. But as with any wetland or watercourse crossing, particularly a watercourse crossing, maintenance of that culvert is essential. And it doesn't take much to block the flow. A few branches coming downstream, debris, and a few branches can block that culvert, both culverts completely. And if there isn't someone paying attention, that has the potential, particularly with some of the extreme storms we've been having, to cause flooding of Losi Road. You're at an elevation of 442 in that vicinity for the driveway, and Losi Road's at 442.3. 0.3 isn't much of a safety margin. So I have concerns about the obligation to maintain that culvert by the property owner after construction is complete. And given that that head wall is essentially on the property line, do we get into issues with maintenance access that may involve the neighbor's property? That's a concern. That aside, moving on to the driveway itself, whether or not a common driveway is in compliance with zoning regulations remains to be concerned. But my concern is runoff on a 9.5% slope of a gravel driveway. It is not going to continue to be performed with sheet flow across the driveway. That driveway will get rutted from vehicle traffic. There will be 2 low spots going up that driveway that's going to channel the water parallel to and downhill of that driveway, and it's going to wind up at the very bottom. You can plan on sheet flow, but with a gravel driveway, you're not going to maintain sheet flow. It's going to find its own way downhill. I would much rather see this driveway paved. The 9.5% is just 0.5% under the 10% that triggers a paved driveway. The other concern I have with common driveways is the obligation of both property owners to contribute to its maintenance. And that's not a wetlands issue, understood, but it is a concern with respect to maintenance. And if it's not done, or if 2 neighbors cannot reach common ground on making sure that it does get done, it simply won't get done. I have a property not far from here. I have a 1,500-foot driveway, and let me tell you, I know what the storms can do to that driveway. I know firsthand. I also know this property very well, since I grew up in the neighborhood. It is wet, and it will be subjected to some pretty extreme flows, particularly with our recent changes in climate. So those are my initial comments, and I'd love to hear how some of these issues are going to be addressed. One last question with respect to the cutoff wall underneath the culverts. Is there going to be a head wall? I see a cutoff wall in the details, but I don't see a head wall. And that's all I have at the moment. I would love to hear Mr. Peterson's responses.
Yes, so we did touch on some of these items on the site walk today. Maintenance is definitely critical. We had a good discussion on that. It is our approach to have maintenance in the deeds, so when the property is turned over to a buyer, they will have a obligation of their responsibility, their shared responsibility between the 2 property owners. So we've talked about cleaning out the culvert, as you had mentioned. It may be responsibility of plowing snow. It may be responsibility of maintaining this driveway that is shared. So our approach is to have some language in the deeds to make the property owners responsible for that shared maintenance. You also commented about the cutoff wall. We are not proposing a head wall. The cutoff wall was a requirement of Carl Asimovic from our 2006 engineering review. That was incorporated into the plan.
Exactly where is the cutoff wall with respect to the end of the culvert?
So it would be at the inlet side on the end of the culvert.
So at the very upstream end?
Correct.
Okay. Again, from my perspective, as both an engineer and a longtime, lifelong resident of this area of Willington, as much as I hate to make demands of a prospective property owner, I really would like to see this driveway paved. I think it's to everyone's benefit to pave it because Mother Nature will destroy it given enough time. Okay, I think I had other questions, but I will let someone else speak up at this point.
Evan, did you have any questions after reviewing this information and after the site walk, after you saw the site?
No, I was able to answer any questions at the site walk, I think.
My main question was having the dual, there's one stream channel and having a dual pipe. My question was, how are you going to pick up the flow from that channel into these two pipes? Are you going to have to widen that stream channel at that crossing to get the flow into those pipes? And why would the piping extend further than the actual 14-foot driveway?
So yes, that channel, particularly on the downstream end, may need to be widened to shed that stream flow back into the natural course it's on today. And in response to the second question about widening the length of the culvert in relation to the driveway, that is just to provide a side slope tapering back to original grade. Since we're going to be providing a 2-foot tall culvert, we're going to have approximately 2 feet of cover. We need to then taper from the elevation of the driveway, approximately 442, back down to existing grade, which is around 438 on the high side, just below that on the low side. So there's approximate 4-foot elevation change that we need to blend in on the shoulders. And that's why it's fairly steep. So we have a erosion control blanket proposed in the shaded area on the upstream side.
And on the sidewalk, you say that these were sized for a 50-year storm, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
We did send this to Joe Dillon for a review. He had a couple of comments, which I think you have copies of. One was for him to revise his drainage calculations, which he did. One was he suggested the commission consider the installation of a guardrail along that portion of the driveway. And I can't remember what the third was.
Yeah, the third comment was adding a spot elevation to the cross section at the area of the culvert crossing. That's a very simple
That's this here.
addition.
That's Eastern
No, that's
Highlands.
Eastern Highlands Health Department.
His memo should be the same.
He's the town engineer.
Correct. I can bring them up. Those are the calculations that he revised.
Okay.
I can.
And how are the revisions reflected in the site plan?
This,
Okay, yeah, I read this.
Jacobson. So he provided the updated drainage calcs, which you just had, as in response to Joe's comments.
that was for comment 2, the revising maintenance and value. Number 1 was recommending a guardrail at the culvert crossing.
Okay.
And number 3 was adding spot elevation of a detail.
Yeah, I guess my just looking at that was the connectivity, the aquatic connectivity, downstream, upstream movement of fish and animals. So I guess how do these culverts, does that blend in with the stream crossing guidelines from the DEP that they provide?
So my approach was to set the culvert on the inlet side at the stream. I think we had a discussion on site briefly about, do we want to center one of the culverts at the stream, offset the other culvert to convey the low flow through one of the two culverts.
Yeah, or the high flow, because there was some evidence of scour from, because that stream does make a hard turn, then come back down, and it looked like it kind of overflows into that kind of floodplain area that was closest to Losi Road. So I just didn't want to see an instance where there's a high flow event, hurricane, and we get a bunch of rain like we usually do, and see that kind of build up and just. Do you think that those culverts could handle that type of flow, or should there be kind of like an emergency bypass in place there?
So we've designed them to handle the 50-year storm, looking at calculations that Jacobson reviewed. So we'll pass that flow. Beyond a 50-year storm, I see the surface water draining across the driveway at that 442 contours, which, as Mr. Chulis pointed out, gives us minimal freeboard for something above and beyond a 50-year frequency. I selected that because that's what was in the regulations.
And you said those are going to be embedded within the sediment itself, and you're going to have some substrate.
Yeah, so we've got it 0.6 of a foot below grade with the bottom of those culverts, and then backfilling those culverts with stream bed material.
Now, the construction of these culverts, what's the material?
Stream bed material?
No, the
culvert itself.
piping itself. Is that like corrugated, smooth?
Oh, it's a contact corrugated.
Corrugated? Okay. That was my biggest observation was, how wide is that stream when we were looking at it today? It has been raining quite a bit, so it did have some good flow. Was it like, 3 feet, something like that? If you like place those like on either side, or you're going to be widening that stream even wider, that's 35. So now you're, what's that, 70, 82 inches? So you're widening that stream pretty far. So that was only my question. If you're placing those on either side or whatever, you're gonna have flow hitting that front head wall, and what's that gonna be constructed out of?
So I'd be happy to slide the culvert so one of them aligns with the current width of the stream bed, and same with the outlet end, to allow that steady flow to continue on its natural course as it does today.
Yeah, if it's like, and if I'm just presenting that to you, that was like one of my observations and concerns. If I'm not the engineer, so if I would just see that stream getting widened just in that area, which I don't know if that would reduce the water level or anything, but
trying to keep the water level the same. That's why we're setting that pipe low, so the stream bed is the same.
that's all I really have. Mr. Dromney, any questions of the applicant? I think we've covered just about everything. Okay. So would that mean they'd have to come back with new drawings or?
If you have something specific that you're looking for and you don't, then you could tell them what to do and they would revise the plan accordingly. If you aren't sure and you want them to look at it and come back, then they would have to. So it depends on what you're contemplating.
I mean, that was only my, I mean, these have been engineered, went to our engineer, they came back with questions, they adjusted. So that was only my observations there.
I would like to discuss the guardrail recommendation by Jacobson's office. Sure, the more things we do for safety, it never hurts. But is it necessary? The reason I bring that up is we have a road that's 24 feet wide at the most with a 12-foot lane, cars going 40 miles an hour by. We've got a flat driveway, 10-foot wide, 2-foot shoulders on each side. That's 14 feet. That's wider than the lane of the road, where cars are going to be going very slow as they come down to stop before they enter the road or they pull off the road onto the driveway. I agree the difference is the shoulders on each side. That may have what initiated the comment. I think he brought it up because it would be adding some posts within the disturbed area of the wetlands. But for 14-foot wide, do we need it? And I don't know if that's a wetland question or not. I want to bring it up because if we build the guardrail, it's in a proposed disturbed area within the wetlands, but he brought it up for tonight's meeting, so I wanted to discuss it.
Could you point to where, with the mouse, to show where the guardrails would go?
Yeah, so I don't have them shown on the plan. This was a comment we received.
Just on the side of the driveway itself?
Right.
But he's,
Like it was like a causeway or a bridge or something.
Yeah.
Because you're already disturbing that area, so it's,
I think
doesn't make that much of a difference.
as far as I mean, you're already filling in wetland and culverting a stream. So guardrails on top of the driveway, I have no issue whether you have them there or not. I mean, it's a safety issue, I guess, or not. But I mean, you're already filling in wetland and culverting a stream, so guardrail doesn't matter to me.
okay.
Someplace people have done just the reflective markers on either side so that you know when you're coming over in the snow or something where you need to be.
Right.
Less substantial than a guardrail.
I think that would be for the development,
Right.
developer.
So if they add them, they'll show them on the plan, but for the purposes of at least this discussion, because they would involve the construction within the wetland area, but they weren't on the previous plan, which was approved.
Correct. Yeah, this was a new comment. This earlier this month.
Would it be possible to add in kind of like an emergency culvert into that system? Would that take a lot more engineering? Because that's pretty much flat there, so you're just dropping in another pipe. Is that feasible or
Something smaller at a higher elevation.
Just for excess flow.
yeah, just excess flow, so there's more.
Put in a 12-inch plastic pipe, set it a little bit higher than the current design, so the flow goes through the culverts that are designed, but any extra flow would have a way to pass without overtopping the driveway.
So the top of the pipe would be the same elevation, basically.
Yes.
I mean, is that as an engineer and like hydraulics and stuff? Does that make sense?
It provides some protection to the driveway. It provides some protection if there's a concern for washing out Loshi Road, if there's a 100-year storm frequency. It'll allow the more flow to pass under the driveway.
That might be a good idea. That'd be something that would be what, in a condition, or they'd have to redesign, or that would just go in the condition and they would perform it.
Right, yeah.
It's going to be
We actually,
little
I dealt with
ponds.
this, actually on a property in Tolland, and it doesn't, and the water actually, because I'm not sure if it's the roadside or the property side is a little bit lower. When it hits those pipes and it's full, it ends up coming like around here and it tries to get over, because it's just a little bit lower. Or it'll just move to one side or the other. And the problem that he has is, when his house and his car are on one side and the road is on another, even if it's in it once every 10 years, you have to figure out what the heck you're going to do to get across it. So I think that if it's not a substantial redesign, putting that some type of a bypass in there just to pick up a little bit of additional water probably makes sense, so that you aren't, because it can obviously, at some point they're going to have an issue here, but we have that issue all across town. The problem is it's really complicated to reconstruct these things once people are living in the houses.
Yeah.
So I think that for what it's worth, putting another pipe in while you're there, just to pick up some of that additional volume if it does happen. And I was going to ask the question, and then I was figuring out, could I look at it with a street view? It seems like the property that is uphill, it almost seemed like there was something there, like I don't know if they have a dam or they're holding back water. It seemed like they had a big stone crossing there.
Right.
And is that holding back water?
I don't
It's
think
just-
so. It's just got the culvert that goes through that.
Got it. But I mean,
more
it's,
decorative than.
yeah, but it's conveying a certain volume of water through that pipe. It's not just going to keep, so it's going to back up there. And
Yes.
So back up there before it does
That's
our
right.
side.
Because
Correct.
What's the
Yeah.
pipe
Because they had a
size
much
on that?
smaller pipe.
Right. I don't know what that pipe is, but
I don't know.
I think water's going to back up there and come down
Right.
before it gets to here.
It'll
With a higher
top that.
velocity.
It'll
Yeah.
top that before.
Because that was pretty substantial. That wall, I just remember looking
Mhm.
at it when we were standing out there. It was pretty large. Didn't look like it was engineered. It looked like a bunch of granite block that they just a
The way we
mason
used
put
to
up.
do
Pre,
things.
Yeah.
pre inland wetlands.
I mean, I can try to bring it up, but it just seems like it seemed like stuff was going to back up there before it even made its way down to here.
I just was wondering if you
Third pipe.
if you guys looked at like a 3-sided box culvert instead of culvert piping itself, just to have flow and allow debris and everything to really flow through that and kind of maintain that same kind of channel itself.
I didn't look at it this year. I don't remember if we looked at that years ago. But we'd be willing to add that third pipe. I think that'd be an easy addition to the plan,
Okay.
if you'd like us to.
I don't know if it would be the case with what you just suggested, but one of the points that we talked about during the sidewalk was expanding the overall size of the pipe is going to increase the amount of fill, because it's going to bring the height of the driveway up.
Correct.
And so this is like that sort of that sweet spot. I don't know the difference between the box culvert, but adding the third pipe wouldn't require them to change any of the elevations on the construction of that crossing.
I mean, the box culvert would probably be a little bit more expensive,
A lot more.
but it's a good crossing. You have the connectivity and the minimal, minimized disturbance.
Mr. Chairman, could I pipe up here, if you don't mind?
I don't think I've been nominated the chairman. I'm just commissioner.
You're the chairman.
I'm acting.
FYI.
Acting chairperson, how's that? Anyway,
Ralph.
I like the idea of a 3-sided box culvert over adding a third pipe. I think pipes are going to get plugged. If we had a relatively broad span for a 3-sided box culvert, then you really don't have to dig in the channel to install anything. You can do it on either side. You can get a footing in the ground either side of the water course, land the culvert, backfill it up to the culvert, and you're done. And you're not working in the mud, and you're not subject to the whims of Mother Nature. That's just my observation and my sentiments looking at this from an engineer's perspective, as well as from a lifelong resident's perspective. This is not a major water course. It can be a major water course in extreme rains, but you know, if you're going to put in two pipes, you should have one lower than the other anyway, so that your low flow is maintained in one pipe. The drawback to that is stuff starts to accumulate in the unused pipe in low flow situations, and critters have a way of utilizing that for their home. It can become a problem down the road. The three-sided box has a number of advantages from my perspective, but I will go back to my issue with the driveway itself. I honestly, truly feel that a common driveway in a situation like this, with all of the upgradient area contributing to sheet flow down the hillside, that driveway should be paved, at least the common portion of it. That way, we're not going to see the rutting that is going to occur over time as vehicles traverse up and down the driveway. And the water flow will eventually follow the tire tracks and not flow across the driveway as much as it will flow down the driveway. And I'll stop at that for now.
Is there any further discussion or question of the applicant? So, conditions. Do we want to talk about conditions of the application? There was a lot discussed. You've been writing some stuff down.
So we add the elevation based on Joe Dillon's comment. We talked about, I mean, I think that given that it's related to wetland, even though it's sort of a little bit into PZC land, I think we can add some language requiring that there be language associated in the deed regarding the maintenance, and sort of making all parties aware of what's going to be required. We just have the two sort of open issues related to, are you considering the plan as proposed and previously approved, with the addition of a third pipe or something else? And then the comment that Ralph made about the sort of the potential for flow back down the hill from the driveway. I think we established that the guardrails are something that they can decide, but as long as they're installed at the time the culvert is put in, what they choose to do is what they choose to do. It's not part of our standards in any way. So it's just a matter of where you fall on those last two items.
Well, let's talk to the applicant and engineer. What do you think about all those things? You know, we discussed a box culvert, obviously, that would be better crossing than the culvert. The paving of the driveway. And on the site walk, the sediment trap, you said those were going to be vegetated, or seeded.
And I think those are probably most important during construction,
Yeah.
but we'll keep them there.
I'm just thinking because the culvert upstream is so much less than what we're putting in here, including the third pipe, I don't necessarily have a problem with that design.
Okay.
You know, it's a relatively short distance from that other
That's
culvert
true.
to this. I don't see if anything's going to clog, it's going to be that one.
What's that? The face like this? How's that going to be constructed in material?
That's
Is that going to be like water hardy, like be able to take some velocity and flow?
I'm proposing an erosion control blanket there, which has a steep slope, so it doesn't have to be mowed. So it's going to be a vegetated slope. On that
So that's
north
coming
side.
down from here to there.
Correct. Yep.
All right. And is there going to be like flares on either side of those, or? It's just gonna be the
I
culvert
was
set
just
right into the.
proposing open
Yeah.
culverts.
You know, make sure that gets stabilized pretty good if heavy flow event that can get washed out pretty easily. And do you have anything with the paving or gravel? I mean, what's your take on all that?
Well, it was our preference to have it gravel, that's as we proposed.
Yeah, I was hoping to keep it gravel only because going that 600 feet distance for the houses, that's some serious cash for that asphalt. I think I'm probably around $60,000
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
in just in asphalt, and that's if I prep everything myself. And then
True.
have a paving company come in. Was the ballpark that I got when I first started this. I love asphalt; it's the best way to go, but it's such a huge cost.
Yeah.
That's my only scare I have.
I mean, we can't force you to do asphalt.
So it makes sense to consider some pavers at the very end near
Yeah.
the crossing to firm that up. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not paved, but it's a whole lot better than gravel.
Yeah.
You wouldn't, I'm not proposing that you consider the entire driveway,
No.
but maybe the last
Well, I was just
50 feet or something.
I was just gonna ask if he's more concerned about the tire tracks coming down towards the culvert, right?
Right.
So maybe the first 50 feet or something paved, that way nothing can erode there. Well, I hate millings.
Okay.
Well, you know what happens with the millings?
Yeah.
That's the first time somebody plows with that, that's all gonna be in the
It's gone.
river all over, it's gonna be junk. I
Yeah.
don't wanna do that either. I actually rather do the asphalt the first 50 feet in or something from the road over to culvert for a certain distance, wherever you think it makes sense.
Will certainly stabilize the whole thing if it does
It sure-
go over the top.
Yeah, it sure would.
Yeah.
Because if it's dirt, it's just gonna
Yeah,
take it
yeah,
all away.
Or gravel, yeah.
I mean, I think you're talking just in this area in here.
yeah.
Right.
I think
Right.
that's,
Yeah,
that
just
makes,
past the wetland on the west side.
yeah, that makes sense. It would actually lock everything right in.
And that could give them better traction to get up and go and come down and make that turn.
I mean, couldn't you cut the driveway in a little bit so that it was sort of pitching in, sort of uphill, so that there was a bit of a cross slope on the driveway, so the water would not want to shoot down. It would want
Like a gutter type thing on the side of the driveway? No?
something, just to kind of, so that the water wants to, wants to
Little
go
swale.
in.
Yeah, not so much a gutter, but because you still want the sheet flow, but just have a slight slope to it,
Okay,
pitch down.
Zoom in, like,
Yeah, he's got a cross slope
Okay.
drive.
Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
That's what you're proposing.
So
Okay,
I'm trying to have a,
Cross slope
Slight-
driveway to drain to the east.
so
Yeah.
those,
Okay.
that 450
All
and
right.
454 in the rectangle
Yes.
is
Yep.
not exactly perpendicular to the driveway. I'm trying to show a,
Yeah. You've got
Cross slope
458,
there.
456.
Yeah, I get that.
oh, I see. The shaded area?
Yeah, then that will direct stuff into this
Correct.
basin here.
Oh, I understand. What is that? Is that rock?
no, that's a blanket, the shaded area.
Oh, that's a blanket?
The erosion
Oh,
control.
okay.
So if he paves through this piece,
That
and then
444 contour with the box around it, just past the wetlands. That gets us
Oh,
2 feet above the elevation of the driveway, back towards the road.
Mhm.
I see. Yeah.
Does that change your grading at all if you do pave that? Not really.
Not really, so you're adding a couple of 2 inches
Yeah,
or
2, 3
2,
inches.
3
yeah, it'd be like 3 inches compared to the 2.5
Yeah.
probably, right? So
Yeah.
that's okay.
you comfortable with that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe
it makes sense. I would like to
maybe
do that.
from,
It locks everything in there, and it's kind of like a guarantee, not a guarantee, but pretty much a guarantee that it's not gonna erode away.
the
If
low
it ever did go over the top.
Yeah.
to that proposed
Yeah.
444.
Right, if it was gravel, it would just be swept away. It'd be downriver, downstream.
Okay. So we're gonna have the addition of maybe that little emergency, just that extra pipe there. and the applicants agreed to pave up to that level.
Okay. What are we talking, like a 24-inch pipe or something, just higher elevation?
I'm even thinking smaller than that, so we
Okay, got it.
maybe
12
only
inch.
12 inches.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I walked up
12
to,
inches.
I walked up to the neighbor's yard over there. His is, that's a 24-inch pipe
Okay.
Oh, it is.
with quite a few sticks.
So
So
yeah,
it's really not 24 inches. I can see what you mean by clogging up because it's, that thing's loaded.
we've got
I can understand why you're saying these things.
Yeah, what I saw was when I was out here, you can see how it kind of hopped the bank here and start like, draining and flow into the wetland, that big kind of like forested little area
Yeah,
here.
coming towards the road.
So just one of my observations, and that shows me that there's, change in flow and direction just from the main channel. So that's all. I want to avoid you guys from getting all jammed up and having this thing, really flood out, if, when we get Hurricane Sandy again or something, but God help us all when that happens. All right, so those modifications and stuff will be in the conditions, or do we have to like read them off?
Well, you should at least make sure that all four of you have consensus on what they are. So we've talked about making that the maintenance requirements be referenced in the deed, adding the spot elevation per the town engineer's comments, paving from Losi to the 444 contour shown on the driveway, and adding a sort of a third bypass pipe of 12 inches, I think is what we talked about. So
Minimum, yeah.
if those are the conditions that you guys are comfortable with, you can incorporate them into a potential motion. I will stop sharing so you can see them.
So Evan and Ralph, were you able to hear those conditions we were discussing?
Yes.
Yeah, I did hear them. I don't fully agree with them.
Would you like to have a discussion?
Like I said, I think the driveway should be paved, the common portion. I honestly like the three-sided box culvert over piping. You can get a wider channel, water channel underneath the driveway. You don't have the vertical restrictions that the piping is going to introduce, and you have a less likely chance of any obstructions from Mother Nature, be it branches, debris flowing downstream. I don't know where the road leak-offs are into this wetland. That may or may not contribute to a problem. But I don't agree with putting 3 pipes in there. I think that's silly.
Well, they won't be all together. It'd be
I
2
understand.
and 1
I
side.
understand that. I would really like to see the elevation of the driveway pavement at least a foot below Losi Road. But I don't know if that's achievable as depicted currently. That way, at least if there is an extreme event, the water can flow over the driveway, but not flow out onto Losi Road. That's my position. If it's going to be gravel, there should be some water bars at regular intervals going up the grade. Cross slope or not, like I said, the rutting is going to occur. And if you don't have some water bars across there, like speed bump kind of things, it will run down the driveway until it hits the low point near Losi. And we'll take a lot of gravel down the driveway and dump it into the water course.
Would the water bars change the sheet flow on that?
It would direct it.
I know
down
it would be much more directed.
All right, sheet flow's a nice goal, but it's not going to last. Those are my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that a box type culvert would be a big improvement overall as far as the flow goes. They, in my experience, do tend to clog up a lot less and be a lot less maintenance involved. But again, the cost is a good deal higher.
Yes, but our concern should not be focused on cost. Our concern should be what's the best solution for the situation that we're looking at.
The elevation of the driveway compared to Losi Road is what, 0.4 or 0.6 inches below?
Yeah, so I've,
And how wide is that before it turns uphill? So I'm just wondering how much volume can that driveway carry before it goes on to Losi? Should it overtop?
So in terms of elevation, we have a 442.3 spot elevation shown in Losi at the end of or beginning of the driveway. The driveway drops slightly to 442, or just below that, there's a pair of 442 contours, and then we start to incline as we go over the culvert.
Mm-hmm.
You can get about 4 inches of depth of water over the driveway as currently depicted on the plans
Correct.
before it goes onto Losi Road. And that's not for a very wide expanse, because you start climbing up the driveway and then you're climbing back up to Losi, but it's going to get focused towards Losi Road no matter what.
So we've designed to pass the 50-year storm frequency.
Yes.
If the board is in favor, we've offered to add a third culvert to increase capacity and allow greater storm frequency to pass below the driveway.
So just like a general, we can't force them really to do anything. We're just
What do you mean
I
by
mean,
force, and what would be the thing?
Well,
Would
it's
be
less
the-
than ideal, but I think they've met the requirements.
Well,
That's my opinion.
you are considering feasible and prudent alternatives and whether there might be some. So the question, there's always an alternative to everything, right? But the question is whether the alternative is feasible and prudent. So it might be feasible, but it might not be prudent. And that's the question you are wrestling with every application, right? We could ask them to put in a 40-foot bridge deck and go right over the top of it. It's feasible, but not prudent. And so you're somewhere in the middle now with this discussion about the culvert. A question that I just want to ask, because I was not here to be lucky enough to go through this 15 years ago or whenever the heck you came back, but I just want to back up and at least hear a 10-second explanation of how it was determined that this was the most prudent place, I don't want to use the word prudent, reasonable place to cross the wetland. Because we talked about this a little bit before, there had been discussion about 2 driveways, now we're back to 1. So is the location here because it's a narrow point in the wetland and it makes sense? Is it also because of having to make that hook to come up the hill and having to meet that grade?
Correct.
Because I'm just trying to figure out, do some of the things that we're dealing with here go away if there was another location, but do we pick up other problems that we determine aren't worth it? And I don't know what that other discussion included, but I just want to be sure that this is the most logical place, since we're rethinking some of the other things the previous approval settled on, that this is still the logical crossing point. I think we established it during the site walk that the second driveway and all this other stuff, I mean, the crossing here, you'd require 2 or much wider. But I just want to, like in here, for example, it's a little bit narrower. I want to at least get that in.
But that just shortens everything up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first 2006 application had a second crossing all the way to the left of the stream, which required 2 small wetland crossings and some site work between them. As you move closer to the shared boundary line between the 2 parcels, yes, that's the widest crossing. We want to avoid that. As we move to the north, that gets a little bit narrower than the wetlands at the shared boundary line. This most northerly location to cross the wetland allows us more length to try to minimize the slope of the driveway as we climb the hill. It also provides a great sight line for traffic coming around the bend in Lotion Road.
Yeah, he's got the second driveway proposal there. That's the one I really,
Was that actually
that's the one I
approved,
really
though?
like.
I think that was that approved? I thought because the bottom right-hand corner, doesn't it say denied?
Denied.
Yeah, that was denied.
I
Yeah.
think there was also some concerns because this is a much less, you're on the curve,
Right. Your sight lines.
so then your sight lines get a little bit more challenging. So this is, I mean, aside from being really far up, it's as far away from that curve as you're gonna get on the property.
Yeah, I've got a distance there of 375 feet, and I can see that could be longer. So yeah, this is the best sight line we can get.
If you dig into the zoning regulations, there should be a 400-foot sight line. Not
I can revise.
375.
I'd be happy to revise that on the plan. I should like from that.
That's my bad.
Is there any further discussion for members of the commission? I'd like to make a motion. Go ahead, Ralph.
I was just gonna say, I said my piece.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Inland Wetlands application IW 25-3 application to construct common driveway with associated site improvements at 57 and 61 Losey Road. Owner D. Stakowski, applicant M. Peterson, with the conditions discussed between the applicant and the
Want me to
commission.
go through them so we can agree? So one was referencing the maintenance requirements on the deed. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Revising to include the spot elevation per the town engineer. Yes, agreed?
Yes.
Okay. Paving the driveway from Losey Road to the 444 contour. Yes, so far. The installation of a third 12-inch pipe.
Yes.
Okay.
Would you consider water bars on that drive? Just
What they don't like
Just-
about water bars is
When they have to
plow and
plow,
maintenance.
okay.
Well, if you get a good base, the gravel, that should have infiltration through that,
we're hoping.
depending what the substrate's like. Okay, continue. All right.
And then the only other thing, Ralph noted expansion of the plan to show a 400-foot sight line. So that would leave the current crossing plan in place, adding the third pipe, not requiring or discussing the box culvert. And then I think you're not going in the direction of the water bars. Is that what I am gathering? Okay.
And then they would just submit an updated plan, or
They would
how
submit a revised plan to us that satisfies
attached to
those.
that?
And you
We-
will,
We would send it to Joe Dillon to make sure that it satisfies his comments, even though he already got the revised calculations, just to make sure that he's good to go. He could check to make sure this was here.
Okay.
And if something came up, if he calls tomorrow and says, I can't do the following thing, then they're gonna have to come back to you to modify the approval.
Okay, that makes sense.
But I mean, all of these things are fairly straightforward, right? The deed, the spot elevation, pavement, the third pipe, you've identified the size of being 12 inches. So in the sight line, there's not a lot of subjectivity to that. So unless he has questions about how to revise it, he would submit that to us, do the review, then we would finalize the permit based on the revised plans. If that's what you ultimately agree on.
Is there any further discussion? Abstentions? Is there a second on the floor?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are you a nay, Ralph?
I'm a nay.
Three yeses.
Okay, moving on to our next item on the agenda is old business. We have none. Correspondence, we have the NatChog Healthy Watershed Advisory Board representation.
So this is the Natchog watershed. There are 8 towns, and there was a grant that was received to do a watershed plan, and so that they're seeking representatives from each town. The Conservation Commission will be sending a representative, but just making you guys aware of the plan and the program, and if we can have more than one representative. So if there's any members of this commission that want to sit on that advisory group, we can tag you in with conservation. I don't know who the representative will be yet. Kathy said they were going to be discussing it at their meeting, but if anybody's interested,
Do we have details like what is it, like a meeting, or is it like
it'll be like preparation of a regional watershed plan. So I don't know exactly how long or how involved of that commitment that'll be. We basically got an email with some information on the program itself, or the proposed program plan, or how they're going to go about it. So if anybody's interested, I can share it, or we can stick you guys on as one of those representatives. I think there's a meeting coming up in April to kind of do a kickoff. If not, like I said, conservation will have somebody.
Okay. Is there, can you forward that email to the commission if anyone's interested?
Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about it, I guess, before we decide.
Yeah, sounds cool.
I think it and there's probably even more than just one. So if you see it and you're like, I want to be on there, and we have multiple people, I think there's no issue. It's not like we're a voting body or something, and they're saying each town gets 2 representatives. So
It's like a think tank almost.
I mean, they're going to be preparing a plan.
Okay.
So
Is it like part of like the MS4 or something like that?
no, I think there was a grant that DECD or DEP awarded for like the region or that watershed area. So there's going to be a planning process that they're going to go through, and I haven't established all that yet. They're sort of reaching out saying, hey, everybody got the grant, who wants to be involved? So I'll send the email, and if anybody wants to be on it, just let me know and we'll ship your name across.
Yeah. Evan
Sounds good.
wanted to get on there. I'll take a look.
Yeah.
Ralph, were you interested?
I got too much on my plate at the moment.
Okay. Cool. Next is staff report and discussion. Anything on that?
It's been kind of quiet. We had someone stopped in the office today who's sort of having a disagreement with their neighbor about putting yard waste into a culvert, or into a stream that ultimately makes its way into a culvert. So we're going to have to do some friendly education for the neighbor to just let them know that these even though things are like that are small, they still plod things up.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, it's been pretty quiet. We haven't really had any permit approvals or anything.
Okay. Next, we have public comment. We have a gentleman here. Would you like to speak?
But I was told by the planning officer that I wouldn't be able to speak on the issue till the application is presented to you.
Yeah, there's a 14-day open window,
Yeah.
right, Mike?
Yeah, I spoke to him in the parking lot. He received notification from a timber harvester about an upcoming harvest. So they've started their application with us, but it hasn't come in yet.
Okay.
So I explained that it would be on the upcoming April meeting. And that you don't know about the application yet because it hasn't come in.
Right.
But because the requirements that we have in our regulations are that they have to notify abutters within submission, they started the timber harvest application and they've notified all the neighbors.
I see.
So they're starting to get the letters, but we don't have it on our agenda yet.
Okay, so we don't even know anything about it.
So you'll have it on the agenda for your April, whatever it is, meeting.
But they stated in the letter, they're gonna start on April 15th as far as cutting. And I'd like to have some type of walkthrough of the property prior to that, because there are intermittent wetlands going
That
on.
can't happen anyway, because we're not even receiving
Yeah,
the application, so that's just not going to happen, so.
So it'll be the April, it'll be the 28th meeting, 4/28.
Yeah, they might have been trying to get on this agenda,
Right.
but they might have missed the window.
He submitted the timber harvest, but not the inland wetland app, and because there's
Oh,
wetlands
We
on the
haven't
property.
even received it, so.
Right.
Then we've got another.
Well, if it's just timber and he's not doing anything
Oh,
else, we'll
okay.
do it
Yeah,
at
we
one
can do
meeting.
that.
One meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not even something we could add tonight for receipt or even discussion because he hasn't completed the
Yeah.
submission.
Okay.
So it's still in progress on the portal.
Yep.
Someone who has come before the commission in the past, so they know the process. But yeah, we changed the regulations to require the notification with the anticipated start dates and those types of things.
Right,
But they try to get them out when they get their submission started, and
Yeah.
so they have a start date, but they're not going to have approval by that date.
Right.
So he's going to have to come.
Yes.
He cannot begin harvesting as of the date that's on the
letter.
letter, because he won't have come before.
Yeah,
you.
because he needs approval from
Yeah.
us.
I'll call you guys right away if he starts doing cutting.
Yeah,
on the
it's
15th.
unlikely, because most of the people that do the harvests are really pretty good about,
Yeah,
know, they
it's
know
just
that
in
we
the
can
letter
shut 'em
from-
down.
This is from Diane Becker.
Yeah.
She signed it.
and
so.
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. She probably thought that
Yeah.
things would be completed, but
Yeah.
they're just not.
So
So,
started, yeah.
so we'll get it and we'll go through it.
I had a bad situation probably about 15 years ago with my neighbor to the north, Sandra Lund, who started harvesting the property and encroached into my property,
No,
like 2.5 acres, and they started cutting and they hauled the timber out while we were suing them. So,
interesting.
so I know Becker and that they had their surveyor out there, because I saw the flags out there, and it pretty much goes parallel with my no trespassing signs. However, my A2 survey towards the rear of the property doesn't match up with their sketch that they presented in their letter, so I'm worried about another possible encroachment. So I'd like to know where their idea of the boundaries and more, find out if we're coordinated as far as the boundaries, so there's no encroachment
Sure.
and no boundary dispute taking place.
I think we've dealt with something like this
Right, where
recently,
both
right?
parties would go out and make sure that they have the boundary
Yeah.
lines
The letters,
agreed upon
yeah.
before any work is done.
Yeah, and
So
there's,
that's certainly been
Yeah.
something we've done in the past.
right, and there's no intermittent stream there that,
So they are allowed to harvest within wetland. It's an as of right.
Okay.
It's considered an agricultural practice.
sure,
And that's all pretty much
sure,
regulated through the state forest.
Yeah, yeah.
So they can
okay,
go into a wetland and cut trees
Okay.
if they like.
yeah,
but if the contact information of the harvester should be on that letter, and they, as this happened in the past, like, could meet you out there,
Yes.
Yeah.
because our regulations
could-
require that they flag any tree within 25 feet of the property line or whatever it was. So if they establish the property line and then he's flagged or marked those trees, then they'll know, because they're not clear cutting, it's a selective timber harvest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're gonna go in and So they should be able to say, okay, here's the line, and then they will know exactly what trees are going to be cut. Like I said, the guy, the applicant is Anthony Grassi, who's come before this commission not long ago. So he should be familiar with the regs.
Right.
But he may not have gone out there yet and even done all that work. I don't know where he stands, but
Right.
those are all things that the regulations require.
Sure.
Was that
That's
information
it for
helpful?
me. Yep, yep.
Okay.
All right.
Very
Thank you.
good.
Great,
I'll
thank
see
you.
you at the next meeting.
Yep.
All right.
All right, next on the agenda, Mr. Rodney.
I'd like to make a recommendation that we call this meeting to adjournment.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.